Welcome to Speakeasy, the jazz explorative podcast found in the smoky, dark-lit corner of the room. On Speakeasy, jazz music is analyzed, deconstructed, and put back together again. Today's episode debates its relevance, importance, and current state in the culture. What does jazz music make you think? Where is it heading? These answers and more coming up on this episode of Speakeasy. I'm your host, Cesare, joined by co-host Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Cesare. As he just said, I am Jonathan, and with us today we have Tristan to my right, Mac to my left, and directly in front of me, Dean, all of whom have strong opinions and thoughts when it comes to music. My guy myself, Mr. Miles Davis. Who do you guys think of?
Who do I think of when it comes to jazz? I think you have to think about people from the past, because there isn't really any strong figure who's leading the way today that's in the public eye. So it would be people like Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and the classics, which I think is something that we're really missing in the modern era.
I guess I would have to agree with Mac on that one. You have to look in the past. You got to look at, like you mentioned, Miles Davis, even Louis Prima. You talked about Frank. Quincy Jones, you know, he definitely got a lot of his roots from jazz music. It definitely, when it comes to being modern now, you're not going to have that same tone, essentially, but that's what comes to mind when I think of it. Dean, how about you?
Believe it or not, I think of Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick is one of the biggest guys right now, fusing jazz and hip-hop on such a big scale. He got guys like Terrence Martin and Thundercats jamming it up with him to Pimp a Butterfly.
On the topic of relevance in today's society, you guys mentioned being fused in today's music. Where can we go when we want to listen to it?
Nowhere, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't know. I just don't agree with you, Mac. I think there's a lot of places we could go to, especially in the city of Toronto, being as diverse as it is. You got places like the Rex, Club Lula Lounge, even Jazz Bistro on Victoria Street. There are so many places you could go to, and historically, like, the city of Toronto has strong roots in jazz music. Like, you had legends stopping through town and playing here in, like I said, in Toronto. So I just do not agree with you, sir.
Guys, well, I believe, for the most part, jazz music, blues music, all this stuff's been on the decline for years, as we can tell by what we're listening to right now on the radio. But it's still got a beating heart, 2 out of the 4 Beatles are dead, but people still listen to the Beatles. Even though jazz is quote-unquote dying or a dying breed of some sort, there's still the jazz bars all around. There's still YouTube as well, so you can always explore what you want to listen to, when you want it to listen to, wherever you want, realistically. So you don't have to actually go out, enjoy live jazz music. You can have it wherever you want.
And that's the thing too. I think we're like in a society now, I think now more than ever, when you got streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music, you could explore these songs that are so not in your current time, but you're essentially time traveling, and that's what's really cool about it. And it might not be the main music, like you had the 20s, the 30s, even the 40s, where you would go to clubs and that was what you were hearing. You were hearing jazz music. And now it's more of a niche. It's not necessarily the main thing that's in your face, but it's just changing. I don't necessarily think it's dying, Like, Dean, what do you think? You think it's still around?
I think that its peak has gone a long time ago, but people still like to hear the classic tunes, especially out in the radio, and just hearing it in general at restaurants and stuff like that. But what you hear now is the biggest artists that are like pop, hip-hop, R&B, a little bit of soft rock and stuff like that, but I think it's long gone.
When we went, as you all know, we all went down to a jazz club. We saw, jazz in the 21st century as it is. What were your guys' thoughts about actually seeing a jazz show instead of, everyone's lining up for the pop shows and the rock shows?
Well, I prefer it. I've always kind of been described as an old soul, and as long as there are people who have that title, the old guy in a young guy's body, they're gonna find something. As Tristan alluded to, in this day and age on the internet, you can find anything, and they'll find a way to keep jazz alive.
I thought it was a cool experience. I've never been to such a small venue or just a solo jazz act in general. I'm used to going to bigger artists, even of all genres, but I thought it was a cool, intimate place. The jazz band was very, very thorough in what they love to do, and yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, you know, it definitely wasn't my first experience seeing jazz music being performed live, but much more intimate than any times I've gone out to see jazz before. I thought it was a great experience seeing Chelsea just do her thing on the saxophone. Yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool, and it's kind of unfortunate that the place wasn't packed. And wasn't, you know, it's not as if people were overfilling the establishment, and it was kind of unfortunate too that from what I saw, most of the people there were kind of just enjoying it as background sound and weren't really giving full appreciation to what was being played. But
Yeah, it was pretty much like background music. People were there to either eat or be at the bar. Some were even watching the Raptors game that was on. But just to have the presence of music, it actually made the atmosphere way more nicer to actually be around.
Well, I think it's safe to say overall that every genre of music has its peak, but just because it's not at its peak doesn't mean it's dead completely. And
Very true.
even though certain genres, time has come and gone, like rock is another example, we see
Yep.
that it still exists, just it's maybe become more underground, or it's only got a certain number of followers, as we can expect. Common trends always take effect in people's
Lifestyle.
likes and dislikes, sort of like that. They just follow trends. In that case, that does happen. It's just a mentality that people have.
On behalf of Mac, Dean, Tristan, your host Cesare, I'm Jonathan for Speakeasy. Thanks for tuning in this week. We'll hear from you soon.